Hello everyone, Santir here with another video in my talking about stuff that's been on my mind, sharing my internal monologue series. And I brought it up in a previous video, and I thought it was an interesting idea. Taxes. Taxes are, of course, the way that the government funds itself. They're an important part of providing for all sorts of public services, things that are important to the citizenry. I have some thoughts about tax structure that have been kind of rattling around my brain. I think is kind of interesting to talk about, hopefully anyway. So as I've been thinking about it and kind of looking at tax structures, now I'm in an area that has had quite an increase, so to give some background here, on the value of housing. Now, I happen to live in Washington State and in the Puget Sound region, which narrows things down a little bit, but that area has had massive increases in the value of homes since my family moved out this way. And that has some impacts on property taxes. Now, Washington State does not have a state income tax, so it does not tax your income, but it taxes ownership, so properties that you own, for example. Property tax is a big area, and of course, sales taxes as well. Now, the reason why I bring all this up is seeing the way that property taxes go up and that people get priced out of their homes because the government is basically charging them rent in the form of property tax has been making me think some about where are taxes applied and what seems fair to me. Now, everybody's going to have their own ideas of what seems fair, but as I've been thinking about it, I feel like the only fair thing to tax is income, not ownership. So let me spell out the distinction between things. Income is money that you receive in. That's income. Whereas ownership is things that you possess. So like land. So taxing land. Property taxes have been a popular tax for a very long time. But owning land does not... Because here's the thing, right? When I hear about people having to move because they can no longer afford their property taxes, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. If they own their home, why should they have to move because they can no longer afford to live on land that they own? Like if they no longer have like mortgage or any of that sort of stuff, if they just straight up own their property, why should they no longer be able to afford to live there because of taxes? That doesn't make any sense to me. And so if they're generating value from their land, that's going to become income, right? If they are renting it out to somebody, or if they are otherwise like farming, for example, to make produce, if their land is making them income, then that could be taxed. And like that's what makes sense to me to tax is income, is when money is changing hands. So sales taxes have the problem of increasing the cost of things in a way that can sometimes be a problem, but that's usually why things like necessities like food are sales tax exempt. I just like straight income of like, instead of putting taxes on selling things, this is like, okay, how much money did you take in? You're going to be taxed on that. It just feels fairer to me. It feels fairer to say, here's a portion of what you took in as income that gets taxed rather than taxing ownership. I don't know. That to me seems fairest. Also, this is just another like connected thought that I've been thinking about. I was talking in that previous video about the structure of the United States government. And like there's a bunch of things where like from a hierarchical standpoint, I'd want things rearranged because it feels cleaner to me. So what I would actually want is I would want the federal government to not tax citizens. I'd want it to tax states. Because in like my understanding or not understanding, structurally, the way that things are arranged, the way that I kind of want it to be is the federal government is the government that governs the states, and then the state government governs like the counties, and the counties govern the citizens, or something like that. To where the federal government, rather than taxing citizens directly, taxes states, which taxes citizens indirectly, but it's based on however the states want to do their taxes. I don't know, maybe this is like overly complicated, but it makes sense to me to be like, okay, the federal government is for governing the states, so it should then tax the states rather than citizens directly. I don't know. That's kind of an aside thought, but I'd be curious to know what people think about this sort of thing. Taxes are important. They're going to happen. as they say, only two things in life are certain: death and taxes. And there's a reason why taxes happen, because we need to pay government in order to have civilization exist. And I think all of us would rather live in some sort of civilized state. I know there are people who would like to be able to not have any taxes. At that point, you have no government. At that point, you have no one to enforce rights. And that, like, I just don't have enough faith in humanity as humanity exists to think that can at all work. So anyway, that's been some thoughts on taxes and the way that is structured. And like I said, I don't think it makes sense to tax ownership, because that doesn't mean that anybody has any money from that. And so you can just be draining their reserves, and it feels very unfair to me. And I think taxing income makes more sense. So anyway, until next time, thank you all very much for watching. You can support me at patreon.com/Scientier. And until next time, everyone, take care and goodbye.